Hey everybody, it's Mama to Wife One. Thank you guys so much for coming back to my channel. I know it's been a while, but I'm here, as you can tell from the title of this video, to talk about the documentary called Martha that's currently on Netflix. Before I delve into that, make sure you like this channel, subscribe to my channel, comment below, and yeah, like the video, share, all that good stuff. If you guys don't know who I am, I'm Mama to Wife One. I'm a content creator, I'm an influencer, I'm also a writer and an editor, and as you can tell by my name, I am a mom of two babies and a wife of one husband. So, and I also like to watch a lot of documentaries. It's just what I like to do. And I already know the next documentary I'm going to watch. I'm not going to announce it probably to the end of this video, so definitely stay tuned for that. But I want to talk about this documentary called Martha that is on Netflix. It's about Martha Stewart. If you guys aren't familiar with who she is, I feel like the younger generation was introduced to her through her collaborations with Snoop Dogg. And in the older generation, i.e., my generation, we were least familiar with her, even if you didn't necessarily follow her or read her stuff. But she was basically America's homemaker. So she wrote a bunch of books, had her own magazine, her own company that was all about entertaining. So it was about, creating the best kind of spread, entertaining the masses with the food and making it look really pretty. And it was just about living, just home living, just making it look really pretty. So the documentary is told completely from her standpoint. They don't really interview anybody else, which I thought was pretty interesting. They have like, well, I'll say, actually, they do interview other people. What I thought was interesting was the other people who were interviewed, like her friends, her daughter. You hear their voices. Like you'll hear the voice saying, "Yo, yeah, Martha did this and my mom did this," but you never see their faces. The only face you actually see being interviewed is Martha's face. I thought it was very interesting the way they did that. Um, I never took the time to look into Martha Stewart. I never cared enough to look into her background. I thought it was pretty interesting. She started as a model. She had her own catering company. She was also a stockbroker at one point. She moves in very specific circles. Like she has always been about making that money and just making sure she hangs out with the rich folks. I learned a lot about her personality wise. And so I basically wrote down, because I know your girl likes to take notes, I wrote down the five things that I got out of the documentary, i.e., five things I also learned about her. I, I'll say this: the documentary, I'm sure, only shows a bit part of her story, but one of the main things I got out of it, and she kept saying is that I'm a perfectionist. A lot of people who are in that line of work, you are going to be perfectionists, which makes sense because you want everything to look just so. You want it to be really nice, every I dotted, every T crossed. I understand that. But sometimes having that personality can carry over into your regular life. And it means that you don't cut people enough slack. It means that you're very careful with the image that you portray, which means sometimes you're actually lying to yourself about the situation. And I kind of saw glimpses of that with her. And also this sense of delusion isn't the right word, but definitely not holding herself accountable for things. I saw some of that a little bit in some of the things she discussed where I was like, huh. Specifically her marriage. Like, if you guys have not watched this documentary, when she talks about her marriage, she was only married one time for multiple years. She talks about, or it's brought to her attention that she had an affair, cheated, kissed another guy, slept with another guy. And she's like, oh, but my husband didn't know about that. So since he didn't know about it, then it didn't happen. Like, just little things like that. Or on her honeymoon, mind you, this woman, and there's definitely only rich white people stuff. She gets married. They go on a 5 month, MONTH, 5 month long honeymoon to freaking Europe. While they're there, she was like, I went in this church and it was just so beautiful. And it was just such an emotional experience. And there was this guy there and he was gorgeous and we kissed because it was so emotional. And the documentarian is like, so you had an affair and cheated? She was like, no, I had an emotional experience. No, no, you kissed the guy while you were on honeymoon who was not your husband. That is cheating. But in her mind, it was not cheating because we got swept up in this emotional experience. No, 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 no. Again, I just felt there was no accountability a lot for her. So, number one thing that I wrote down, being a mom isn't for everyone. And she has said herself, she grew up with a mother and a father. She said that neither of her parents were very affectionate, and therefore she's not overly affectionate. And she also mentioned that motherhood just does not come natural to her. She has one daughter. Like I said, the daughter is interviewed a little bit. You can hear her voice a couple times. But You almost never hear Martha Stewart talking about being a mother, what it was like having this child, what it was like to be her mother, like, the struggles I had, the joy I have. It's like she just mentions it as something that took place and doesn't talk about it all. And granted, maybe it wasn't a big deal to her. Maybe she's like, hey, this is what happens when you get married, you become a mom like that. So I just kind of did what I was supposed to do. And so maybe it wasn't a big deal for her. But it just didn't seem like motherhood really changed anything or like I, I feel like maybe it's because I make my not living, but I talk a lot about being a mom, then maybe I'm gonna be a little biased in this sense. But I feel like it would have been some kind. Normally, when someone first becomes a mom and they're reflecting on that time, they say things like, "Oh my gosh, my world changed when my daughter came. I had no idea I could love something as much as I did her," or I just seemed like she talked about it in a very cold way and just kind of a matter of fact way with no emotion side behind it. And I will say for the whole documentary, I didn't get a lot of emotion from Martha Stewart. And I don't know if that's just who she is or if she believes that showing emotions isn't a sign of being perfect, isn't a sign of perfection. So therefore, I'm just going to hold on to this and you're not going to see that side of me. That could be it as well. But granted, again, said being a mom is not for everyone. Just because you have a child, it makes you a mother on paper, but it definitely isn't for everyone. And I give props, and a lot of people don't. I give props to any woman who decides for herself that she does not want to have children. I think that's incredibly admirable. I think that's the most selfless decision that you can make because you understand that, you know what, I don't want to be a mom or I wouldn't be, well, I'll say I wouldn't be a good mom. But some women just don't want that. And because there's a lot that comes along with being somebody's mama. So if you know deep down in your heart that it's not for you, that is amazing that you know that and that you're not willing to bring a child into this world just because somebody tells you that you should. Somebody on a soapbox, I'm gonna leave it there. Number two, which I thought was interesting. She was married to her husband for 27 years. He had an affair. She had an affair. There was this dynamic between them where she was kind of going up, up, and up in her career and making really great money. And I think he was probably not making shabby money either because she made a point to say, I don't date broke dudes. I only date really like rich type guys. So he's making his living. He's like doing well. But there was just a lot of friction there. And there was probably a tug of war when it came to power, when it came to respect, based off what other people said and what other people observed when they were together. She didn't really show him the kind of respect that maybe he wanted as a man. And I put something else in the notes. What? Perfectionist does, okay, perfectionist doesn't want to fail. Because she made a comment where she said, we weren't happy, but I couldn't leave my husband. At this point, she's a millionaire standing on her own. Most of the time, when a woman says she can't leave her husband or can't leave her marriage, it's because she doesn't have the money, because she doesn't know how she's going to take care of her child by herself, because she doesn't have a support system. And so they feel like they have to stay with their spouse because they literally have nowhere to go and they're not going to make it on their own. And I understand those situations. You at this point are a full blown millionaire. So you logistically could have left your husband. But the fact that she worded it that way, I couldn't leave my husband, is not, she didn't say I didn't want to leave my husband. She said I couldn't leave my husband. Because if she did, that would put a pin in this whole balloon that she has created for herself of being the perfect wife and the perfect homemaker and the perfect hostess. That was her whole thing. And again, she focused so much on this idea of being a perfectionist and idealizing perfectionism, whatever, however it's phrased, that she didn't want that on her record, technically. I didn't want to have this divorce on my record. I didn't want to be the one to break it up. So she would have been fully content to just be with him, to just have a husband. Because in all this conversation, she doesn't say, "Oh, I loved him so much and I just wanted to stay with him." She just said, "No, I couldn't leave my husband." That was it. Again, no feeling, no sense that it's breaking my heart that this will happen. Like, no sense of that at all. It was just like, we have this thing. I have built my life and my reputation on being this thing. So, no, I'm not going to leave you. He's the one who ended up leaving her. Um, but I just thought that was really interesting for her to say. I was like, oh, do you really love this man? And I still don't know if she loved him. And this the other thing was weird. In the documentary, she's talking about the marriage, talking about him having affairs, and the documentarian is asking her questions, trying to get to the heart of what she felt essentially during that time. But Martha again doesn't do feelings, she doesn't do emotions, so she didn't talk about it. She's like, "Oh, I gave you letters, right? There you go, the letters." And so then you see this montage of these handwritten letters that I guess she submitted to the documentarian and to his team. And in the letters, these are like private letters that she wrote her husband during that time. Don't leave me. I couldn't sleep. I'm not eating. This marriage can't be over. Don't do this to us. And it seems kind of emotional, but also seemed really erratic and almost seems like she's saying what she thinks that she should say, as opposed to, again, there was not real mention of I love you and I want this to work. I'm going to help to make this work. What can I do? There was nothing like that at all in the letters. But the fact that she submitted these letters as opposed to wanting to talk about, I thought was really interesting as well. Because I don't get the impression that she was necessarily hurt by it. It was just like, oh, that was an a-hole thing to do. Like, he slept with this person that I hired. Like, that was dumb. Very withdrawn from it. I thought that was her approach. Her whole approach was really interesting. Number three. Oh yeah, and I said this earlier. She inherited no emotions from her parents, and it impacts her relationships. I don't know how she is with like her homegirls, her friends. Again, a couple of them in the document where their voices were in the documentary. But yeah, it's interesting, right? From our parents' perspective, a lot of times when we become parents ourselves, just become adults ourselves, we tend to look at what our parents did or didn't do. A lot of times we show them grace because we're like, okay, they did what they could. They worked with what they were given. They adopted things from their parents that they thought were right. But then once you become an adult, you have the choice to acknowledge what took place, forgive your parents if you need to forgive your parents, and then move on and just be a better version of what you think they should have been to you. Whether it's a better version as a mother, father, or a better version just as a friend, as a husband or wife. I feel like Martha understood that, oh, they didn't give me that affection. I don't think she took the time to be like, oh, I should be better. It was just like, oh, well, they didn't show me affection, so I don't show affection. And she's, I want to say in her 70s or 80s. And for her to immediately adopt that, understand where it comes from, and just immediately be like, okay, well, I'm not going to show affection either. I thought it was interesting. I feel like at some point, most people will be like, oh, wow, I am like my parents. I need to do better. She saw no need to, maybe. And I don't want to say that's fine, but that's kind of an option too, right? Like you see some stuff your parents do, and sometimes it takes so much work to reprogram yourself from what you've been taught, what you've seen, what you observed when you were younger. And a lot of people don't want to do that work. It's just a lot easier to fall in line with what you've seen, to, say, oh, well, this is the way I've always been, or this is the way I've always been taught, so I'm just going to keep going this way. It's very easy to adapt to that as opposed to actually putting forth the work to change into the person you think you want to be. And Martha just ain't had time for them games, I guess. I was like, okay. She's an interesting woman, I'll say that. Number four, she is what I put. But she's a boss. This woman had multiple magazines, multiple books. She had TV shows. Her name was on everything. And that was the thing. I heard a YouTuber say this a long time ago. He was like, I have all these ideas of things that I want to do. But what I do is everything that I choose to do, I put my name on it. Therefore, they can never fire me or they can never replace me. Because if you decide, hey, this show ain't working no more, guess what? You can't replace me because my name is on everything. And she pretty much did the same thing. Every single thing she had was Martha Stewart Living, Martha Stewart Homes, Martha Stewart appetizers or whatever. And I think that the documentary, definitely from a businesswoman standpoint, she was a freaking boss. Now, in personal life, I don't think she's necessarily something to emulate or to really look up to. But as a businesswoman, she did her daggone thing. And that's one thing I will say. I give her a lot of props for that, especially in that time. It doesn't matter if you're a white woman or not, being a woman, period, people didn't want to listen to you. And a lot of people did tell her no initially for the ideas that she had, or just try to put her in this box of, oh, you make really great crab cakes. Let's just stick with your crab cakes. No, 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 no. There's plenty of other things that I can do. I want to do this. I want to take this over. I want to take this over. So I did appreciate how adamant she was in her products, how adamant she was with her image, and just that she kind of went for it. And again, had her name on absolutely everything. I thought that was so incredibly smart. And the last thing, age is a number. There's no limit to your transformations. And I probably have said this on this channel before, but as long as you still have breath in your body, that means there is still chance for you, or still time for you to do something that you've always wanted to do. And throughout our lives, we go through constant transformations as we get older, as we become parents, become husband or wives, become widows in some cases. Every major thing that happens in your life means that you have now developed into this new person. There's something new for you to accomplish. There's something new for you to overcome. And all of that comes with some kind of transformation. And that could be a physical transformation, but most of the time it means you looking at the world in a completely different way. It could mean, like for her, she went to jail for insider trading. That was something she wasn't expecting was going to happen to her, and she was doing it happen. She was in there for, I want to say, 5 months. And those 5 months, a lot of her businesses, they kind of fell by the wayside because that's the other downside to having your name on everything, you being the sole person making all these decisions. Now that you're gone, they're left like, okay, well, what do we do now? Because she can do a little bit of stuff in prison, but for the most part, they limited her interaction with certain people. So she wasn't able to really run her businesses the way she wanted to. So 5 months, a lot of the stuff that she had built up and taken years to build up fell by the wayside. And so what she had to do, she has to reinvent herself. That's when she met Snoop Dogg and she was on the roast, the Comedy Central roast for Justin Bieber, met Snoop Dogg, had all the stuff with him, had the TV show with him. She started getting on Instagram, taking like body pictures of herself. So now she's the oldest woman on Sports Illustrated. Like she completely, and I'm sure again, she didn't expect any of this to happen, but she had to reinvent herself. And I feel like we saw her do that a couple times. I told you she was a stockbroker at one point. So she went from that to like getting into the home decor and the decorating and the hosting and all that stuff. So throughout her lifetime, and I would think for someone who's been on this earth for 8 decades, you're going to have multiple times where you're going to have to kind of shift and reinvent yourself. And yeah, the age is just a number when it comes to that. There's plenty of time for you to make that shift or that pivot in your life to do something that you've always wanted to do or to bounce back from something that you had no way of knowing was going to take place. So I will say the documentary I think is very interesting. If you are familiar with Martha Stewart, I would watch it. If you're like, I don't even know that lady, then don't bother. But if you like documentaries, what else you got to do, right? There's a bunch of Christmas movies also on Hallmark. You can watch that as well. The documentaries are really interesting. I thought it was really interesting seeing her story. I didn't have an opinion of her before I watched it because I don't think about Martha Stewart. She's never once taken up space in my brain. I don't care. But again, I'll say as a person, I wasn't really feeling her as a person. As a mother, I definitely wasn't feeling her. I was just like, I mean, I guess you're who you are and you make no apologies for it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But as a businesswoman, I think that she is something to admire. So that is my video on the Martha Stewart documentary. The next documentary I'm going to watch, I think it's on Hulu, and it's about the rapper Shine. If you guys are from my generation, again, I was born in '81. So it's my generation, and you know the whole bad boy era. You know that Shine came along after Biggie died, I want to say. He had a very deep, raspy voice. He had a couple hits with Bad Boy, and then it's a cloudy memory. He was at a nightclub with Diddy and J-Lo when Diddy and J-Lo were dating, and there was a shooting. And the way I always interpret it was Shine took the fall for somebody else, and he ended up going to jail for a decade. And he's out now. I don't think he's rapping it, but the documentary is basically about exactly what happened from his point of view and what he's done since being released. So I'm gonna watch that just out of curiosity, and I may or may not do a video on it. We'll see. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. Again, make sure you like, share the video, subscribe to my channel, and leave comments below. Let me know what you think about the documentary if you've watched it. If there are other documentaries that are out there that you think I should watch, definitely let me know. I like watching documentaries on pretty much on celebrities, sometimes on big major events that have happened in the world, but I like watching celebrity documentaries. It's just interesting learning about their story. So thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will see you next time. Peace.